Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. On today's episode, I am so excited to be joined by Laura Kay to chat all about her latest book, Making It, the unmissable, fun and sexy rom-com about finding yourself, art, friendship, and living with depression. Laura Kay is a writer based in London. Her journalism and personal essays have been published in The Guardian, The Bookseller, Stylist, and Diva magazine, amongst others. In 2018, she was selected for the Penguin Random House Right Now scheme, where she developed her debut novel, The Split, which was also longlisted for the Polari First Novel Prize. Her fourth novel, Making It, is out now and published by Quercus, and here to chat all about it, welcome, Laura, to A Pair of Bookends.
Thank you. That's a lovely introduction.
Yes, you deserve a lovely introduction. I actually have read, Matt Cain said that it's like meeting Marianne Keyes and Dawn Porter in a cosy gay pub. What are your thoughts on that?
Very nice, very kind. Thank you, Matt Cain. Yeah, what a lovely supportive author. Yeah,
You've,
that's a really nice thing to say, isn't it?
yeah, you've also been called the Queen of Queer rom-coms, so I
I don't
think
know who
that's.
called me that. I feel like
I've
probably
tried to find out, but I'm not sure. But I would take that and run if I was you.
maybe I called myself that. I don't know. That's really nice.
Iconic.
That's so nice. Yeah.
My sister is a big fan, so she would
Oh,
agree. Yes, she was very excited when I told her that I was chatting to you today. So
that's so
I
nice.
know. But to
Oh.
kick us off, I am going to ask my favorite question, which is, what are you currently reading?
When you told me you were going to ask me this, I totally panicked. Like I was like, oh my God, I've actually never read a book. I'm reading Evenings and Weekends by Ocean
Oh
McNamara.
my gosh, it's on my list. It's on my shelf. I need to read it.
I can't recommend it enough. I think I've very nearly finished. I checked last night. I think I'm reading it on Kindle, so I'm like 85% or something. And I'm just eking it out now because I don't want it to end.
Mm.
Like I I love it. I just want more and more of it. So yeah.
I need to read this so much. I feel like when I'm in the dark days of winter and I
Mm.
want to feel like I'm having an intense hot summer's day, that's going to be like the perfect
Yeah, you're
book.
absolutely right. That's going to be perfect.
I'm picking that up soon. I'm very excited. Now, for our listeners that are yet to read your wonderful book, Making It, which I finished very recently and absolutely loved this book. It is
Okay.
so wonderful. But for the listeners that haven't read it yet, how would you describe it to them?
I would describe it as, well, first of all, a fun and sexy rom-com about depression, which is how I pitched it to my agent, and she was like, "Okay, um, give it a go." It is, I mean, it's a book about sort of a late coming of age, an artist who's in her late 20s, who has never lived away from home and who suddenly sort of finds herself thrown into London and working in the art world and having housemates for the first time and sort of falling in love for the first time, like a whole lot of firsts, while also dealing with the backdrop of this like quite difficult like mental health situation that she's having and sort of juggling both things. And it is about living with depression and anxiety rather
Mhm.
than like overcoming it.
Yes.
um and I think it's funny and nice and good.
It is all of those things, I can
Right.
confirm. But before your novel opens, you've included a this wonderful author's note for the readers, and you say that this character is not a problem to be solved, which I really loved. Why was it important for you to include that?
I feel like I think this is probably the most personal book I've ever written.
Yeah,
Like it is not about me, but it's the character that I relate to the most and who
yeah.
I think I have probably on purpose or inadvertently poured more of myself into and than any other character that I've written. And I have read a lot of books about, characters with various named or unnamed mental health conditions. And sometimes they're handled in a way that's like, and then they did this, and then everything was better.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just like, and sometimes that's true, and that's also totally fine, and that's like a really valid story to tell if that's the story that someone else wants to tell. But that's not my experience, and also I'm not sure that's just not the story that I wanted to tell.
Mm,
And like, I don't think that the character that I wrote is someone who needed fixing. Like
mm.
was like she is like a whole valid person.
Yeah.
And I didn't want people to read it, recognize themselves, and then think there's something in me that's wrong and
Yeah.
I need to be better than that. It's like, no, that's like, you can be totally fine and live a whole
Yeah.
life without needing to be something else. So that felt really important for me to say. And I mean,
Absolutely.
mainly I wrote that note because I was like, people who've read my other books might be surprised by some of the content. And I like, even though it's all very, there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of joy in there,
Yeah.
but I didn't want for people to be like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah. No,
So
I get that, but I do think to emphasize, like, there is a lot of hope and joy in it, and there's so many funny moments in the book, and we will get to those. There's so much that made me kind of laugh out loud, and there's lots of like lovely like scenes with the friends. But on the subject of like mental health, I think you write about what it's like to experience kind of anxiety and depression in this sort of beautifully nuanced and kind of subtle way. So we sort of see how easy it is for our kind of mental health to sort of decline if we're someone that's kind of particularly vulnerable, if we're not kind of checking in with ourselves and our own needs, if we're kind of ignoring our needs, then we see through Issy like how easy it is for us to sort of snowball, and the impact that has on ourselves and our lives, our work, our relationships. And I was kind of curious if you felt any kind of pressure on getting it right when you were writing about mental health, or whatever getting it right means.
yeah, and I think you've really like hit the nail on the head there. Like, what is getting it right? And
Yeah.
it's like there's so many experiences that people have had that they would put under the same umbrella.
Hmm.
And it's like, I think actually that's something else I touch on at the beginning of the book, where I'm like, this is an experience. This is not all experiences. Like, I cannot write about everyone
Yeah.
or everything in one book. But I did feel a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of pressure to like treat the character in the right way, I
Yeah.
guess. I didn't want to ever be flippant. I didn't ever want to be uninformed or careless the way that I was writing. So, like, although having said that, having put a lot of myself into it,
Hmm.
I was confident that I was portraying an accurate experience. And it was something that I recognized. And when I read it through, and then when I obviously shared it with my team, like, I felt that it was like honest, and I was comfortable with it, going out there, and that I
Yeah.
could stand by it.
Yeah.
So even if there had been, someone had something to say about it, or that people felt that it wasn't, representative or whatever, I was confident to say, well, it represented like my
Yeah.
truth. Yeah.
I think you write it really well, because I live with anxiety, and there was a lot of it that really resonated with me. And there was this perfect line in the book, where I think it's her friend Aubrey says it's like you're behind glass. And that line to me, I was like, oh my gosh, that is it. Like, that is how it feels. Like, you feel like there's something kind of separating you from other people and like the rest of the world, and it's so hard to articulate that. But I just really wanted to emphasize like how much that line specifically resonated with me.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for saying that. I mean, I feel like that, like, if I, especially if I'm in like the pits
Yeah.
of anxiety, and I often think like, how can you not like like I can be talking to people and feeling like I'm having like, I don't know, and I'll be like, how can you not see that I'm barely
Belly
here?
hair. Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's like not the fault of anyone else. It's like, I
No.
guess people with anxiety, I can't speak for you, like, obviously, but like, I am really good at masking it
Yeah,
now, like
yeah,
having did it for a long time. And I guess I can do like a whole social interaction
yeah,
completely normally and then be like, "Oof, barely here."
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so, oh, I'm glad that resonated with
Oh,
you. I'm so
100%.
sorry. That's a
No,
horrible.
it really resonated with me, and it's just nice to be able to kind of put words to something that you've always struggled to articulate, because when I read that line, I was like, that is it. Oh my gosh. I would like to talk about something that brings your protagonist a lot of comfort and joy, and I feel like you've probably been asked about this a fair bit, so apologies in advance. But it's her pet chinchilla,
Yeah.
Abigail. You knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Why a chinchilla?
I truly don't know. I mean, I was gonna do a cat or a dog, and then I was like, no, it needs to be more portable than that.
Yeah,
Like truly, there was a practical reason behind it. And then I read a little bit about, and then I was like, I don't want it to be like a gerbil or whatever, like it just doesn't feel. Anyway, I started reading about chinchillas, and they're like extremely intelligent and loyal
yeah,
and interesting. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. And it was like it was as simple as that. Abigail, the chinchilla, is the thing that I've been asked most about with this book. And it's because people, without giving any spoilers, like people get extremely attached
yeah.
and very concerned.
Yes, we're
And
emotionally attached
I've
readers.
felt a lot of that concern via the DMs. I
I
have
get it.
give so
I get
many
it.
warnings about this book,
Yeah,
about a book. Yeah, it's
we're
all
not
about.
we're not giving any spoilers.
No.
But I know that my sister is going to be really cross with me once I've handed over this book.
Yes. 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 Yeah, I've done
So
a lot
I'll
of.
just send her your way rather than mine.
Absolutely. I'll just send her the standard response, the standard apology. Yeah.
I love that. Now, you've just said about needing Abigail to be portable,
Mm.
because your novel is set between Margate and London, and Margate is home for Issy, and she kind of moves to London to set up a sort of new life there. She kind of toys with that idea of whether she can completely move away from home. Why is Margate a special place for you? Is it a special place for you, or is it just somewhere that you really wanted to write about?
It's somewhere I really like Margate. It's
Yeah,
not a particularly special place in that, like, I'm not from there. I don't have like a personal connection, but I really like Margate.
yeah,
And again, it served a really useful purpose. It's within driving distance to London.
yeah,
It's you can get the train. I wanted a seaside location just to contrast with the city. I know Margate really well, so it was easy to write about. I feel like I was able to capture it correctly. And it also has this really interesting thing going on where it's been super gentrified in the
yeah,
past maybe decade, but it's still extremely there are people who are living there who are still really struggling with things like food poverty and unemployment levels and like all of these things. There's this really stark contrast between some of the new people that have moved in and the people that have always lived there. And that was important for me to
yeah.
show in the book as well. So yeah, that's the Margate sort of connection.
Have you always lived in London?
No, I was born in London, and then when I was little, we moved out to Hertfordshire, Essex way, and then I moved back about 10 years ago.
So was that quite a shock for you when you moved back to London and trying to like navigate your creative career in such a busy city?
Actually, yeah, it probably because I went to Sheffield for university, and
Yes.
then moved, and then I lived there for like 6 years, like
It's
including
very
the
different in Sheffield
very
to
different in
London.
Sheffield. And so moving back to London was a total shock to the
Yeah,
system. And like the size of it, the amount of people,
yeah,
everyone's trying to do the same thing in terms of like everyone that I was like socializing with was trying to do the same thing. We are all
yeah.
like sort of hoping for something to happen.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was. So I mean, I remember what it was like being sort of in my early 20s and like plunged into the London like queer scene.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was actually really fun to write about.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let's talk about friendship because it's a huge part of the book, and I absolutely loved the scenes in Flat 47A and their kind of exchanges in the group chat. Just their scenes were just so fun and really nice to kind of immerse yourself in. Did you have a lot of fun writing those parts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The writing friendships and writing the friendship group dynamic is always my favorite part of writing any book. And it has become sort of, I didn't even like realize, but like it's been like a total theme throughout all of my novels is
Mhm.
that the friendships are just as important as the romantic relationships in terms of what's on the page. And there's something so fun about writing an unestablished group. They all come to each other as strangers and then building a new dynamic
Mhm.
together that becomes by the end of the book like a family. And they all have these really distinct personalities
Yeah.
and they're all ridiculous in their own way. And they're just that dialogue, especially between the four of them. Like there's like two scenes that stand out to me in particular. One is the first night that they're all there and they're all on the roof together and they're just like feeling each other out. And it's like, especially with like Alyssa, I got to like have so much fun with her because she's such a nightmare. And then when they walk the length of the Victoria line together,
Yeah.
and I just was like, I could write those characters forever. Like the four of them together, I just thought is such a joy.
I love that, and I definitely wouldn't be walking the length of the Victoria line, but I really appreciated that they wanted to do that.
I
But I
really
liked
want to do
their version
it.
of doing it. I liked that they were kind of taking breaks, they were going to the pub, they were stopping. I like the idea of doing it, but whether I'd actually be able to do the full thing, I don't know.
My sister did it.
Stop.
I've never done it. Yeah, she did it, and they got sort of progressively drunker.
Yeah,
Like it was a lot of gins in tins.
yeah.
And then I think they just sort of by the end had kind of stopped talking to each other. Like, so tired,
Standard, standard.
tired and drunk. Yeah, but I would like to do it one day. I think it would be good fun.
Yeah, it would actually, yeah. Which of the friends, if you had to choose one, if you could only choose one of them to be your
Yeah,
friend, who are you choosing?
Alyssa, because I think she's mad and
Yeah.
fun and the most loyal person that you
She
could
is.
probably meet. And I really think she'd tell you if you were, if you were in the wrong in a kind but firm way. I
Yes.
really like her. I loved writing her.
And she really takes care of Izzy
Yeah.
when she's
Yeah.
struggling and when they just kind of, she holds her when I think she's like wearing a dressing gown or something and she's just
Yeah.
kind of holding her. So she's a proper like motherly figure of the house,
Yeah.
isn't she?
Yeah, she.
I loved her. I'm going to ask quite a fairly deep question now. And it's based on a quote in the book, which I absolutely loved, and I folded down the page. Here we are. So this is Elizabeth, the artist that Izzy's gone to work with in London, and she's describing the project that they're working on, how this can kind of help people and wanting to kind of them to have the right perspective on working on this project. So she says, but it's also an opportunity to create hope for ourselves, for others, to show how art is not just about galleries and shows and prizes and prestige. Art is not those things. Art is being human, it's expression and feeling and meaning beyond skill or criticism or this industry. Now, although it's a different medium of art, you are a creator of art. What does creating art mean to you? Big question.
It's a huge question. I think I suppose it's two things. Like it's a privilege because
Yeah,
I get to do it in a professional capacity, which is like beyond my wildest dreams. I could not have ever imagined that this would be my job. So it's a total privilege. And then on the other hand, it is also like what I would be doing it anyway because I
yeah,
can't think of a different way to fully express myself. And
mhm,
like sometimes it's really interesting doing it as a job because and trying to balance what I really want to write with what I think I should be writing because it's the publishing industry is a machine,
yeah,
it's a business like anything else, and it's about sales and money
yeah,
as much as it is about making art available for people to read.
mhm,
And sitting down at my laptop every day is and trying to keep that separate to the machine is
mhm,
difficult.
yeah,
And sometimes I can do it. Like I'll get into the flow and then I'll be like, oh, I felt like I've really said something, or
mhm,
like I feel like I've really told the story that I wanted to tell, or I've created a character who has come out perfectly from my head onto the page. And other times it's really hard to push the voice that's saying, but is this the kind of thing? Is this the kind of thing that people want to read? Is this
yeah.
the trend that they're talking about in the bookseller at the moment? Like, is this something a sales team can really get behind? And it's like balancing those two.
Yeah.
It's a very unique challenge.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. And obviously creating art means different things to different people. And it's dependent on the kind of medium through which you're creating it. Like I'm an actor and I totally get you've got the business side of things and then you've got like I don't really know how to describe it. The not the emotional side of things, but like there's very like you said, there's two very different things at play. And I think it's hard at times to juggle the two, but we kind of wouldn't be doing it if we didn't love it, you know?
Yeah, totally. That's really interesting. And like, yeah, of course, it's exactly the same
Yeah,
with like that industry and like trying to keep the love for what you're doing
yeah,
alive while also battling like the very real forces that can be extremely, yeah, just like super challenging. Like, and
100%.
sometimes can make you just be like, oh, what's the point? And
Yeah,
then you're like, well, you get up the next day and you still want to do the thing anyway. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would like to talk about sex.
okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Because she says in the book, no one ever tells you that sex is a bit silly. And I love that you wrote that. I
Yeah.
love that because no one ever tells you that sex is a bit silly.
Yeah.
And funny and like a bit weird and
Yeah.
there's much more to it than being sexy.
Yeah, it's like there's so much of it. Is I mean, it's just like two weird bodies doing things. Like
Yes.
it's so weird. And like
It's so weird.
I so often think that when you read about, I mean, obviously sometimes like sex in books serves a purpose where you're just like
Yeah.
you've been waiting for them to get together and then you're like, yes, and then it's all perfect and they're all like doing perfect things to each other and they sound perfect and everything's perfect. But like that's not
No.
real life all the time,
No, it's not.
especially if you're sleeping with someone for the first time.
Yeah.
Like if you're in your head, the
Yeah.
narrative is like, wow, this is so sexy and perfect. The narrative is like, oh, what? This is so
It's so true. It's so awkward and messy. You're like, what are we
yeah,
doing here?
exactly. Yeah.
I love that.
A lot of authors I know have, well, people either love writing sex scenes or they hate
Yeah.
it. I love it. I think it's so fun. And I think it's such a great window through which to see a character. Like, it's a perfect opportunity to get inside someone's head, to see how they relate to other people, to see what it means to them, or if it means
Mhm.
anything at all. And it's just such I suppose this is still a generalization, but I guess it's mostly a universal experience. Like,
Yeah.
and it's certainly a universal experience to be like hyper aware of your body in relation to somebody else's. And I love it. I think it's so fun to write.
I am really surprised that you think it's so fun to write because
Yes,
I am working on something at the minute and I'm really struggling. Like
really.
when it comes to like sex scenes, oh my gosh, like my body feels like it's on fire with like how mortified I am. Like I can't ha like I really need to like remove the idea of like who's going to be reading it, but I just can't help but think like, yeah, but what if like my nana picks this up? Like what if my mum picks this up and it makes me want to die?
Yeah.
But
I
then
mean,
also, why are you reading this? Go away.
exactly. Just it's not for them, or if it is for them, then they have to get over the fact that that's
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
What is it that is it something you're writing, like fiction?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, as well, just try and remove yourself from it. Like, just think of it in terms of the characters.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause it can be really hard. Like, I mean, quite often, if I get asked this on panels, I'm trying to think. I think I've definitely stolen these answers from my friend Bethany Rutter, who writes really great books and really great sex scenes.
Is
And
she one of the hosts of What Page Are You On?
yeah,
Oh my gosh, I love that podcast.
yeah, me
Oh
too.
my gosh, I love
Bethany
it.
and Alice. So they
Yes.
both are obviously amazing writers. And I've done a few panels with Bethany, and she's a very good friend. And she she's always just like people ask me as if I'm like gonna be embarrassed or like whatever, but I she was like, it's the character, it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
And once you've got into the character's headspace, you don't have to worry about it. It's not embarrassing.
That's so true.
Yeah,
That's so true. Basically, I just need to remove my ego and get over myself. And
that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
you were saying the polite version, but basically, Hannah, get over yourself.
Basically, get over yourself.
Who do
Yeah.
you think you are? I want to talk about the fact that because obviously we just spoke about sex, love that, but Izzy loses her virginity later in life, and I was curious why you wanted to kind of represent that experience because I think I don't know if I've read that much in books, so I was curious why you wanted to represent that.
It came quite organically, to be
Hmm.
honest. I never set out necessarily to make that a part of her story.
Hmm.
And then when I was writing her moving into the house and like meeting these people and telling her like background, which was that pretty much she left school very early,
Hmm.
didn't complete her exams, then has lived at home and had this like very, very small sheltered life. I was like, I don't think this is someone who would have had sex. I don't think this is someone who's even had an opportunity to go out and like kiss someone and like, like in a sort of like stupid teenage way where you like,
Mm.
whatever. It's probably different now. But so it made sense that that hadn't happened for her, and also
Yeah.
that like that was fine.
Yeah.
Like so many things were happening for her, sort of maybe a decade or more after the sort of like quote unquote normal timeline. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess she probably wouldn't have had sex, and that's cool. She can have sex now.
It feels
Um,
like a big thing, but also not a big thing at the same time. Does that make sense?
yeah, totally. Like it's a big thing because of culturally and societally, we're like, oh my God, like if you haven't had sex by the time you're X age, that's like unusual.
Yeah.
But actually, it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like people just do whatever for them. And sex can mean all kinds of things to different people, which
Hmm.
is like another thing that never gets really talked about. And then once I was putting it on the page, I was like, oh, this is actually so fun
Yeah.
to have her experience it for the first time and be like, oh, it's just that.
Yeah.
Like, on to the
When you
next.
really think about it, you're not actually missing out on.
Yeah, it's fine. I just was like, yeah, I never set out. That was never meant to be a big sort of plot point, but then
Yeah.
that's who she became.
Yeah. I also really loved that was it her first kiss? And she has this allergic reaction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good.
I was like, I can't make it that easy for her. She's gonna
No,
have to get
no. It was very funny. Amongst much of the things that I loved in this book, there are so many funny moments, like I've just said, but there are also like lots of profound things that you write that are just kind of like lovely lines that are just scattered throughout, and you really just need to kind of sit with that for a moment. And I've folded down lots of pages, but there's a moment where you've written, sorry, from Issy's perspective, of course, what a lot of time I had spent unexamined, and it's such a small thing, but I found that really profound because it's really sad, but it's also like very beautiful for her to like finally be seen. I just think there's something in that, and I don't know if it's from what you said before that she's lived such a sheltered life, but just that moment and her getting to kind of come into her own and sort of find herself. And it's not late in life, but it's later than your usual kind of coming of age. I just thought that was like a really profound moment.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think like I guess it's probably a lot of people can relate to feeling like it was really easy to go through life without really even knowing that it matters that other
Hmm.
people know who you are,
Yeah.
or that you know who you are. And when you find yourself among people who are like kindred spirits
Hmm.
or make you feel like yourself, whatever that means, it can be quite I mean, yeah, it's amazing. It's a sort of an indescribable feeling, but it
Yeah.
is like being like, it's actually okay if people can see who I am.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see yourself through other people's eyes sometimes.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I really loved this character and I loved this book. If that wasn't already apparent, before I let you go and before I ask for a recommendation, I am curious what writers have inspired you.
Oh my God,
I
so
know, I'm
many.
sorry, it's a
No,
lot.
it's absolutely fine. I should be more prepared for this question. So I read so broadly,
Yeah,
but when I really think about writers who I come back to and who inspire me, I think about Marianne Keyes and David Nichols, who I actually think write incredibly similar books, even though
yeah,
they are marketed entirely differently.
yeah.
Now I'm looking at my bookshelves for
Love
people
that.
who I'm inspired by. I mean, when I was growing up, I was super like I was obsessed with Sarah Waters, they were probably the first queer books that I read, and I was like, oh my God, these exist. I was also extremely influenced by Louise Renison, who wrote Angus Thongs and Forefront,
Yes.
which are still the funniest books I've ever read,
Yeah,
hands down, and anyone who disagrees is wrong.
yeah,
They are so, so, so genuinely brilliantly funny. And I also read Bridget Jones's Diary about 1,000 times when I was growing up because I just also thought that was hilarious. Even though to read it now, I'm like, oh, there's so much here that's so
yeah.
making. Yeah, I would say those are some.
I think those are really excellent writers to look to. My last question before I let you go is to ask for a recommendation. So that can be anything. It can be books, TV, film.
Okay.
What are you recommending?
I'm trying to think of anything that I have watched or read recently that is worth recommending and that isn't just total junk. I'm like, what was I watching last night? I was watching Maths last night, which
Nice.
is not I do not recommend. My blood pressure was like up. I was so stressed. I what have I been watching that's actually good? Oh, Slow Horses.
Oh my gosh, my friend's literally been telling me you need to watch this.
So good. And I really want someone to have a slow horses party, or at least let me dress up as a very particular character, Jackson Lamb from Slow Horses on Halloween. So that's my recommendation.
Excellent. My friend in question is the writer Emma Hines. I will ask her to make this happen. The Slow Horses Party. Let's get you down to Manchester. Let's make this
Perfect. It's happening.
done. Sorted. Wonderful. For our listeners, Making It is out now. I'm going to pop a link in the show notes. Go grab your copy. It is a wonderful book. I really loved it. And I didn't want to leave Issy. I didn't want to leave her friends, especially. I just really love this book. And I think it is so funny, but it's so profound and hopeful and just wonderful. And I think it will resonate with a lot of people. So go grab your copies. And if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. Laura, where can our listeners find you on social media?
I am at Laura EK on Instagram. I'm barely on Twitter, but it's Laura Eliza K. Sometimes I crop up there. And I also have a Substack newsletter about running and mental health. So,
Gorgeous.
babe, if you want to read.
I will subscribe. I didn't know this.
Great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura,
Thank
for
you.
joining me
This is
today.
so fun.
Yay. And can't wait to see you for the Slow Horses party. Great.
Oh, yeah. See you there.
Thank you so much, listeners, for listening, and goodbye.